that these two lines are parallel to each other. Alright, so it's kind of like they said you can use one of these rules in order to prove this other rule, but basically we're just getting accustomed to learning how to think through to prove things are true using the different theorems that we're given. Example number 4. We want to write a paragraph proof, and in this figure line R is parallel to line S, and also angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. So here's angle 1 and angle 3, and I want to prove, I know that lines R and S are parallel, and I want to prove that P and Q are parallel. And of course they look parallel, but that's not sufficient to be able to prove that. So they tell me here to look at the diagram and to make a plan. And the diagram suggests that you look at angles 1 and 2, and then also 3. And you also might find it helpful to focus on one pair of lines and one transversal at a time. So let's do that. We know that, again, that angles 1 and 3 are congruent, and we also know that R and S are parallel. So they went ahead and labeled R and S together as being parallel. It's important to take all your information here and put it down on your diagram. And so if it's true, and it is, that these two lines are parallel, then these angles are going to be congruent. Because what is the relationship of angles 1 and 2? They are corresponding, because they're both up in the top right and top right. Therefore these angles correspond to each other. Or let me say it this way, that since these lines are parallel, therefore angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent with each other. And now we can look over at angles 3 and 2, and because angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, let me back up and state it. Because angle 3 is congruent to angle 1, and angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, then what can we say about angle 3 and angle 2? We can say that they are congruent with each other through angle 1. So using the transitive property, angle 3 is congruent to angle 2. And now, ignore the right side. Remember before what we did was we kind of ignored the top of the diagram and just focused on angles 1 and 2. Now we're ignoring the right side of the diagram and just focusing on angles 2 and 3. And we know now that angles 3 and 2 are congruent, and they are alternate interior angles with this as your transversal. Remember before, this guy, line Q, was our transversal, but now we're looking at line R as our transversal. And with alternate interior angles being congruent, that proves to us that these horizontal lines P and Q are parallel to each other. And that's what they wanted us to be able to do. Example number 5, last one, tells us this U.S. flag, our U.S. flag, has 13 alternating red and white stripes. I had forgotten that, but 13, of course, refers to the 13 original colonies in the United States, and they're telling us that each stripe is parallel to the stripe immediately below it. And so explain why the top stripe is parallel to the bottom stripe. So we know that this top stripe, the red one, is parallel to stripe 2, the white one. And also the stripe 2 is parallel to stripe 3, and stripe 3 is parallel to stripe 4, and so forth. And so it is through this transitive property of parallel lines. Again, remember that if P is parallel to Q and Q is parallel to R, then P is parallel to R through the transitive property. So we can do the same thing multiplied, 12 times here, that the top strip S1 will be parallel to the bottom strip S3. And that's it.